At 68, Franklin Morris, once the U.S. Attorney General, lived by a mantra: staying active was the secret to aging with dignity. Every morning, come rain or shine, he laced up his sneakers and jogged through the tranquil streets of Crescentville, a postcard-perfect suburban town where neighbors exchanged smiles and the air carried the faint scent of freshly baked bread. But on this particular Thursday, his routine would be anything but ordinary. Franklin had just passed the old bakery, its windows fogged from the warmth of morning loaves, when a faint, distressed cry drifted from a narrow alleyway. His steady stride faltered, and curiosity gave way to alarm. Turning toward the sound, his sharp eyes caught sight of an elderly white woman, her frail frame trembling as two young men cornered her. One tugged violently at her purse, while the other wrestled to free a bracelet from her wrist. "Hey, leave her alone," Franklin's voice rang out, firm and commanding. The men froze, their heads snapping toward him. For a brief moment, they hesitated, sizing up the older man who stood tall despite the years etched on his face. Franklin, undeterred, took a step forward, his fists clenched in a silent warning. That was all it took. The would-be thieves bolted, their footsteps echoing as they vanished into the shadows. "Cowards," Franklin muttered under his breath, watching them disappear into the alley's dim recesses. He debated chasing them, but quickly dismissed the thought. His days of high-speed pursuits were long behind him, and he knew better than to risk injury. Turning his attention back to the woman, he found her trembling, clutching the frayed strap of her now empty purse. "Thank you," she managed between gasps, her voice shaky with gratitude. They took everything." Franklin placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "It's all right, ma'am. Are you hurt?" Before she could answer, the sharp wail of a police siren pierced the quiet morning. A cruiser sped toward them, its lights painting the alley in flashes of red and blue. Franklin felt a wave of relief as the car screeched to a halt. Help had arrived, or so he thought. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Officer Jack Burnett, his hand resting on his holster. His eyes darted over the scene, landing squarely on Franklin. "Step away from her," Jack barked, his tone sharp and unyielding. Franklin blinked, taken aback. "Officer, I was helping her." "I said step away," Jack interrupted, advancing with purposeful strides. The elderly woman tried to interject, her voice tinged with desperation. "No, officer, you don't understand. He's not the one." "I'll handle this, ma'am." Jack cut her off, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Franklin raised his hands, palms up, in a gesture of peace. "Listen, there's been a misunderstanding." But Jack's eyes narrowed, his suspicion unwavering. "Hands where I can see them." Franklin obeyed, his movements deliberate and measured. He knew this wasn't about the robbery anymore. The woman's pleas fell on deaf ears as Jack's focus remained locked on Franklin. "What were you doing here, old man? Trying to make a quick getaway?" Franklin's brow furrowed, his patience wearing thin. "Officer, I told you, I chased off the real criminals. I was helping her." But Jack's expression hardened further. "You think I'm stupid?" He spat, his voice dripping with hostility. "Save your story for the judge." Franklin exhaled slowly, keeping his voice calm. "You're making a mistake." Jack's hand hovered closer to his holster, his body language radiating mistrust. "The only mistake is you thinking you can fool me." By now, a small crowd had gathered, their murmurs filling the tense air. Some pulled out their phones, recording the escalating scene. A young man in the crowd called out, "Officer, let him talk." But Jack didn't flinch. His focus on Franklin was unrelenting. Franklin, mindful of the crowd but unwilling to divert his attention, stayed composed. Raising his voice or making a sudden move could spell disaster. "Officer," he said evenly, "I've been in law enforcement longer than you've been alive." Jack scoffed, a cynical laugh escaping his lips. "Yeah? And I'm supposed to believe that?" The tension hung thick, a powder keg ready to ignite. Jack's finger hovered perilously close to the trigger, his posture tense and unyielding. Franklin understood the gravity of the moment. One misstep could turn a volatile situation into a tragedy. Moving with deliberate caution, he began to reach into his pocket. "Don't move." Jack's voice cracked through the air like a whip, his gun now fully raised. Franklin stopped mid-motion, his hands visibly steady despite the turmoil around him. "I'm just reaching for my ID," he said evenly, his calm demeanor unshaken. Jack's eyes narrowed, his grip on the firearm tightening. "Don't try anything stupid." Slowly, Franklin pulled a badge from his pocket, holding it up high. The sunlight caught the golden emblem, making it shimmer like a beacon of authority. "Take a good look, Officer Burnett," Franklin said, his voice firm yet measured. The crowd leaned in, breathless with anticipation, their murmurs silenced as all eyes fixed on the scene. Jack hesitated, his gaze darting between Franklin's resolute expression and the badge in his hand. The words etched on the metal seemed to pierce through the haze of suspicion clouding Jack's mind. "United States Department of Justice." "My name is Franklin Morris," Franklin stated, his voice cutting through the oppressive tension. "Former U.S. Attorney General." Jack's face drained of color as the weight of the revelation sank in. His grip on the gun faltered, and he lowered it, his hands trembling. "Sir, I didn't know," Jack stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Franklin replied, his tone steady, yet laced with quiet indignation. "You made assumptions, Officer Burnett. Dangerous ones." A ripple of whispers swept through the crowd. "That cop's in trouble now," someone muttered under their breath. The elderly woman, emboldened by Franklin's unwavering presence, stepped forward. "He's telling the truth," she said, her voice gaining strength. "He saved me." Those boys ran off the moment he confronted them. Jack's gaze dropped to the ground, and his confidence shattered. It was a mistake," he mumbled, his words weak and hollow. "I didn't mean any harm." Franklin's piercing eyes remained fixed on him. "Pointing a gun at an innocent man is more than a mistake, officer. It's a violation of protocol, of trust, and of the badge you wear." Before Jack could respond, additional police cruisers arrived, their flashing lights casting an eerie glow over the scene. Out stepped Sergeant Peters, his commanding presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. "What's going on here?" Peters demanded, his gaze flickering between Jack and Franklin. Franklin handed over his badge, his composure unwavering as he recounted the events. Peters listened in grim silence, his expression hardening with each word. Finally, he turned to Jack, his voice sharp and unrelenting. "Burnett, is this true?" Jack nodded, his head hanging low. "Yes, sir." Peters didn't hesitate. "Hand over your badge and weapon. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately." The crowd watched in stunned silence as Jack was disarmed and escorted to one of the waiting vehicles. Franklin's expression remained unreadable, though his eyes held a glimmer of satisfaction. As the scene began to clear, Franklin turned to the elderly woman. "Are you all right, ma'am?" She nodded, a small, grateful smile breaking through her tears. "Thank you for standing up for me and yourself." Franklin gave her a reassuring nod. "Justice isn't just about courts and laws," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of decades. "It's about doing what's right." With that, Franklin resumed his jog, his pace steady as ever. The quiet streets of Crescentville seemed different now, tinged with an unspoken reverence from those who had borne witness to the events. And so, this chapter of Franklin Morris's life came to a close, but the story of his unwavering commitment to justice would echo long after. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this tale. If you found it as inspiring as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more remarkable stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, take care and keep doing what's right.